How you doing?
It is 9 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors to order. Thank you all for coming. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. You guys don't forget. Just saying. First item on our agenda is a public hearing on vacating the streets and alleys within the plat of Glasgow and Jefferson County and conveying said streets and alleys to the adjoining property owner.
Motion to open public hearing.
A second. Have a motion and a second, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. I'm going to read the resolution. Whereas a request has been made with the Jefferson County asking that an alley in the Glasgow plot be vacated as authorized in Iowa Code Section 354.23. Said particular alley is located in the portion of the Glasgow plot found in the Round Prairie Township, specifically found within Section 21, Township 71, Range 8 West End. Whereas Jefferson County has determined that the plot of the alley located in the requested portion of the Glasgow plot is of no benefit to the public, and whereas Jefferson County understands that this plotted alley has not been used for that purpose. Whereas Jefferson County believes the property will be better cared for and be put to better use if it were owned by the adjacent property owners. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors of Jefferson County, Iowa, that the board officially vacates the following plotted alley in the portion of the Glasgow plot located in Round Prairie Township, Section 21, as allowed by Iowa Code 354.23. That plotted alley located in Block 4 of Glasgow plot, running north and south between Lot 9 on the west and Lot 10 on the east. Be it also resolved that Jefferson County hereby conveys ownership of this vacated alley to the adjoining property owner as follows. Brenton J. Clark and Rachel M. Clark are hereby granted ownership of that plotted alley located in Block 4 of the Glasgow plot, running north and south between Lot 9 on the west and Lot 10 on the east. Be it finally resolved that this vacation instrument shall be recorded and is equivalent to a deed of conveyance as authorized by the statute. Did you guys have any discussion on this?
Comments for the public? Hearing none, I make motion to close. Close. Right? Didn't hear any comments.
We should probably vote on it.
You gotta close. the
Yeah,
motion.
Got a second
Yeah.
Oh, they
first.
said-
I second
I'm
that.
sorry. Motion to close the public.
I second that. All in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying aye. Aye.
Mondays. Is that what it is?
D,
Okay.
or you, aye, yea or nay? Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. We'll do it again.
Aye.
All right, it's done.
So you write that down twice. Okay.
Brent and Rachel, thank you.
You have to vote on the resolution.
Oh, we did. Okay, we're coming out. All right. Motion to approve the resolution.
Second discussion, everything's rare to go, right?
Yeah, I have no problem with this property.
Yeah.
And I've discussed with the landowners, the other issue we have in the last time.
Motion to approve the resolution.
So move.
Second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I thought for a minute you were going to let the kids stay here.
How many copies do you need?
Couple.
Yeah.
Is that other issue out there, is that on this?
No, no, it is not.
agenda?
I believe you were sending a letter. Okay.
On it previously, is there a way to do that without a meeting or?
No, we've got to go through the same thing. over.
Okay.
Brandon.
So I'll just give you a call and set that up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I need a motion to accept the minutes from last week.
So moved.
Moved by Sandquist, seconded by Susie. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Meet with County Engineer Dwayne Hines. Thank you very much, Dwayne.
Good morning, Supervisor. Trust everybody had a wonderful weekend. The weather. Gravel roads are sloppy.
Yes, they are.
The county crews were out last week putting rock where they could, and we actually even did a little snow plowing there on Thursday. The Orange Boulevard Bridge, which had been closed due to load restrictions, has now been demolished. And as weather allows, we will install a low water stream crossing there for farmer access. There's a substantial bedrock shelf there. So other than a little grade of work and some riprap, there's not going to be a lot of expense involved with that. So we're kind of fortunate there. We've had, I don't remember if I told you, that we've had the soil borings done for the Iris Bridge and the Palm Avenue Bridge. So we can proceed with those two projects. I've got our budget updates through end of January in front of you. Well under budget on the total, but a few items have tweaked around. We spent a lot more money on bridge and culvert replacement last year than we anticipated, or so far this year. Maybe we'll get that budget amended later this spring as we get closer to a final number. I have a question for you, Mr. Morrissey. Do we have county-wide trail plan?
There's some stuff. It's more of a regional. I don't know if you've seen the regional. I'll have to do some digging. There's a trails council that has some ideas, and then but the DOT actually has like a fairly big, 30-40 page document for this area. It's not just Jefferson County. But
if you could let me know where that is, I'd appreciate it.
I'll try to get something to you maybe by tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great. I'm working on a couple of grant applications that I'm going to try and incorporate some paved shoulders as bicycle trails.
Okay.
To make the grant applications more attractive, and also just basically for the residents of the county.
Yeah, and I think
access to our
there
roads.
would be some of that that's in. I mean, not to take all day, but there were some plans of how to link like Suburban Heights to the Cedar View Trail and the Loop Trail, and so yeah, I'll get some of that information to you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Brittany just updated with your website also. She was asking me about some of the trails.
And other than that, we've done some equipment repairs, and Thomas is still working on the audits for our bridge projects, so we can get those closed out. We're working on plans.
Thank you. Next item is to consider and authorize the chair to sign the Lockridge 20 agreement. Do you want to give us a summary of that, Dwayne?
As you may remember, we're proceeding with the bid for our overlay project, which includes to us 218th Avenue East from Lockridge to the county line. And then Lockridge portions of it is their East Main Street from the city limit to the four-way intersection. This agreement just basically authorizes us to proceed with bidding for the project. There is a clause that if the prices are extremely out of line, that Lockridge can withdraw, which is only fair. We've got a fairly limited budget.
And then what would we do? Would we not do the project?
We just stop at the city limits. So we need to do our portion, and it's gonna have to be extremely out of line for them to back out, because
Sure.
there's really no more. no more good time for them to do that. I mean, we're combining it with a 16,000 ton overlay project, so we'll have favorable pricing just from the scope of the project. And this is just a small portion of it. At least I hope so.
I make a motion to authorize the chair to sign the block restraining agreement for the road improvement.
Second,
We have a motion by Dimmitt, second by Sandquist. All in favor, signify by saying
aye.
aye. Motion passed. Thank you very much. Next item is discuss and consider resolution to approve SoFair Farms minor subdivision replot of lots 1 and 2. And let me read the resolution. Whereas the SoFair Farms minor subdivision replot of lots 1 and 2 now to conform to the applicable ordinances and the standards of the county, and whereas it appears that approval will not be in conflict with the purposes of the subdivision ordinance, now therefore be resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Jefferson County, Iowa approve the replat and cause its approval to be entered in the plot. Guys have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So explain to me what's going on here, because it's been divided. three
I'm
times.
actually, that's my property.
Okay,
And you may remember last May, I talked with you briefly when I called the man in charge of enforcing the nuisance clause.
okay,
And there were 3 trailers that came from North Campus, or, you know, that area there.
I mean, I was not part of the conversation, but I'm aware of what.
Right. Well, at some point you were, but it was brief, so I wouldn't necessarily
Oh, okay.
expect you to remember.
Yeah, okay,
Because you happen to be.
I would interject that it was probably Darren before Lee took office.
Right, I mean, I talked to Darren also,
okay.
but this just happened to be because you were in the same room as, I believe his name is Bruce.
Oh, okay,
Anyway, long story short is that, you know, one of those trailers was put 5 feet from my driveway.
okay,
And to resolve this and probably the most permanent and also expedient manner, I offered him to, you know, buy that property so that I have control over what happens in my driveway. Because heretofore it was, he had the title to the driveway and it was a shared easement. So I had no say what happened right there. So all this does basically is that it's the same number of people that are there. It just divides it so that, you know, I have the section between my house and the road, which you can see on the plot.
If you look at the second page there, below it, it shows the original layout. He's the bottom right-hand corner. So he's extending his property line west to this.
Right.
Yeah. So he's just extending his property line, taking that whole south chunk of that subdivision.
so
And you've been
technically,
interrupting us.
Yeah, they've been looking at this since summer.
Yeah.
Off and on.
so this does not actually constitute another split.
It doesn't because because it's already a subdivision and you're changing the lot lines, it requires action by the board. If I could have just waved the wand and said that it's a no-brainer, I would have, but it would not have been proper, I guess, or legal by that ordinance. So it needs you guys to say that, yeah, that makes perfect sense what they're doing.
Did you read the resolution?
I did.
Did you?
Would you like me to read?
No, I just was gonna go ahead and make a motion to approve, but I wanted to make sure that
I've read the
you had the
resolution.
opportunity to the limelight.
So was that a motion?
Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion by Dimmitt, second by Sandquist. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Sign off on this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dwayne, I could have done that.
That's all right. You just relax. I'll take care of it.
Oh, yay. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and consider a resolution declaring emergency medical service to be an essential county service.
Yeah,
Chelsea said this shorter one is the one not calling for an election.
Is this
but it gives us the options. So we have two. One has an election.
Where-
One gives us the
okay.
option not to. This is the one option not to. And they did that to give us more flexibility. I think we were canceling this, so what do you explain?
So the second one, the shorter version, they're both pursuant to chapter 422D of the Iowa Code. But essentially, what this does is the county acknowledges that that emergency medical services in the central county service. And whereas with this resolution, it authorizes the Board of Supervisors to implement county-run ambulance service. In the bottom paragraph, which I will read, wherefore it is resolved that the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors, that consistent with Iowa Code Chapter 422G generally, and Section 422D.1 specifically, emergency medical services are hereby deemed and declared an essential service in and for Jefferson County. Should the Board of, this is key, should the Board of Supervisors determine that a levy for emergency medical services is necessary and prudent in the future, this resolution authorizes the specific question to be put to the voters of Jefferson County as set forth in Chapter 422D. So we are not, as a board, considering at this time, nor have we considered implementing a levy. So this is just an authorization, a resolution. I'm acknowledging that it is an essential service and that it is the intent of the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors to implement a county-run ambulance service.
Yeah, so there's two ways we can fund this. One is out of the
General
general fund of the county and the others to do a vote. But if we do a vote, it's only good for what, 15 years? So it's not the be all end all. So we've not had that discussion. And the bottom line is the bottom line. It's the same either way to the taxpayers. It's just which way it is administered, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think Susie has an issue with why did I get two resolutions?
Because this was the original one that called for a vote.
And so there, it didn't say there were going to be two on the agenda. Sorry. This is very confusing. I'm sure if anybody's listening, it's confusing them too.
Well, I was surprised, I guess, that the original one was still here, but it may have already been over, but it's a discuss and consider resolution declaring emergency medical services to be an essential county service.
Sure.
Both of those.
I just wondered which one we're going to consider.
The one without the request for.
It could have been, would have been nice to not have the other one in here then. It's confusing.
Well, but I didn't put them in there.
Neither did I.
Right.
Neither did I know it was going to be in there.
So the one that I would recommend that we approve, would make the motion to approve, is the one that does not require the implementation of the levy.
I will second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Next item on the agenda is to discuss EMA. Basically, I was just wanting to bring to light what was said last week in the meeting. And basically, budget was approved. And Tom, would you like to speak to that since you are the chair of that committee?
Sure, yeah, budget was approved. I can't remember the exact funding amount, but to still keep in the $2 per capita that the incorporated entities pay in plus the county. And then to have a levy that would fund the rest of the amount of the budget, which was 74,000 and change, which off the top of our head, we're figuring is going to be about a 7.4 cent levy.
So talk to me about, was it an EMA levy or it's just a general fund levy that comes out of our budget?
I don't know the exact things, but the way the code reads is EMA levy with it.
It would be an EMA levy.
Was that on the agenda?
I don't know whether, I wasn't at the meeting. I'm just, you asked the
Since
question
it's
about
new,
what it was.
We made a motion to approve the budget. That's how it was motioned and second, the $2 per capita with the EMA levy. So we're gonna have a meeting on Wednesday, I believe, to go ahead and pass a resolution for the levy.
I believe that the budget was voted on and approved.
Right, but as a point of reference or information or whatever, the Emergency Management Commission has no authority to implement a levy on behalf of Jefferson County. That would be a decision that we would have to make for whatever reason we would implement a levy. This is completely a separate. It doesn't go through it goes through the general fund directly into a fund established by the treasurer of the county. It doesn't even, any monies that are left over from this levy, if they didn't use it all, does not revert to the county general fund. It stays with emergency management per code. So the Board of Supervisors has no role in, other than the auditor is the fiscal agent, but the commission is the fiscal authority, just to make that distinction. So essentially, we would still pay our $2 per capita. I mean, if that's what the commission decides to do. If the commission decides to do an entire per capita, that dollar figure will change depending on what's needed to fund that.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, Tom.
So do you have anything else on that, Susie?
No, I do not. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and consider disposal systems contractor's license for Buddy Chittick of Chittick, Thailand.
Well, I've not heard anything from Dan. I don't know if you have. I know
Yeah, he
Buddy-
sent us an email.
Okay, I must have missed.
Said he
it.
had no issue with
I
it.
would say Buddy's done a lot of work for us, so I would make the motion to approve the contractor's license.
I'll second.
Motion to approve the license for Buddy Chittick. Approved by, or moved by Dimmitt, seconded by Sandquist. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I guess this just needs to be signed by you, Susie. Okay.
All right, I can come back to that. Discuss and consider employee salaries.
What is this? Oh, that's his. Oh, I'm sorry.
Isn't that just a fine tune what we did last week?
I'm really not sure what we did last week, Dean. We started if we're having a budget meeting. We were going to go through stuff line by line, and we didn't get halfway through. So until we get through, I don't know how we can talk about this.
I think what this is my understanding was the authorization for the compensation board
Okay.
recommendations and the $4,000 flat rate. That was the motion that was made. There was some confusion as to who all the compensation board's recommendation applied to and whether to prorate the $4,000 for part-time. Does that make
That was
sense?
it. So basically, we have some cleaning up to do, is what you're saying.
Right.
And so Robert's Rules of Order says we can revisit this.
Yeah,
It does.
because the budget's not been certified yet.
Correct. I just want to be clear for everybody in the room.
Okay.
It was under my understanding that you guys approved this last week.
we approved the compensation board's recommendation. There was some confusion as to under code, the elected officials, immediate deputies, and that's the term that's used for deputy auditor, deputy treasurer, deputy recorder, that they stay at 85 or 80%, whatever it is, of their elected official. So there was, wanted to be a clarification on that, and then we authorized a flat rate. But the question that came back was, does that flat rate of $4,000 apply to part-time people? As opposed, in other words, if they're working 20 hours a week, do we want to prorate that to say $2,000 as opposed to working 40 hours a week? Okay, that's the question, that there was just a gray area there, or an area that wasn't defined, I guess would be a way to put it. And so I don't know, actually, honestly, don't know who put it on the agenda, but that's what the discussion is because the auditor's office, since they're the ones that are gonna put all this together for the budget, wanted some clarification.
Gotcha.
And so, in that.
You know, I get, oh, come on, D.
No, my thought is we would prorate it. We prorate other benefits. So why wouldn't we prorate the flat rate for part-time people? We don't have that many of them.
Do we have insurance for part-time people?
No.
Then why would we prorate it for part-time people? In my mind, we need to decide what a full-time person is. Per our handbook, it is 37.5 hours. I would say that motion last week that we made was for full-time folks.
Okay. I'm not arguing, I'm just saying that's the reason we're revisiting.
Yeah.
We're just clarifying it.
Mhm.
So then, yes, that would be for full-time folks.
Yeah.
And
So,
those are non-elected.
Yeah, well, I think we passed what the compensation board thought was fair. I think we also did the 4,000 for full-time employees, or those who are deemed according to the hours in the handbook.
So I don't know if there's anything other than to clarify. That's kind of what the conversation was.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. Oh, I think that's me buzzing. It is.
If you guys are calling, then please don't use them. Maybe.
This, give me that.
Supposed to answer.
I wanted to, since we had this on the agenda, I wanted to revisit one little snippet of the elected officials. It had been my recommendation that the Board of Supervisors take 0. There was some discussion about 1% or 2%. And honestly, it was my fault. I was not, it wasn't a question of not being clear. I wasn't thinking. I mean, the motion was very clear, understood the motion and wasn't thinking. But I would like to revisit the supervisor's portion of that recommendation.
You don't want to revisit everything on the
No, just ours.
compensation board.
Yeah, just ours, just the portion that goes to the supervisors. I stand by my recommendation. Like I said, I know that there was some discussion about 1% or 2%. And I could live with either one of those numbers, but I don't think that we should take the 10%.
Right. And we talked about that in a budget meeting. We
Yeah,
just didn't
probably 3
articulate it.
weeks ago we did. So I
Yeah.
wish you guys would have caught that.
It's
Yeah,
my
we did.
fault. Well, it's Joe's fault, but I'm going to accept the responsibility for it. No, just. It's Dwayne's fault. Okay,
It's nobody's fault. It was just an oversight last week at the meeting.
that's my man. Okay, so that, you know.
So what do you want to do? We talked about 1 or 2%, just to have something.
Well, we'd have to
So-
clarify, I believe we'd have to put in a motion, am I right? Pat, you're on, would have to put in a motion to approve or to make the distinction regarding the flat rate. To clarify that. To clarify that the 10% is for the elected officials and the immediate deputies. And to whatever number the board.
What do you mean by
determines for us.
immediate deputies?
Just a-
Well, it doesn't go to the rank and file. It's just for the elected officials and their immediate deputies.
Let me use the auditor's office example.
Right.
Would the immediate deputy be Shannon or would it be Shannon and Abby?
Right, both,
Okay.
Shannon and Abby, but not Darcy.
She's not deputy.
She's not deputy.
Okay, I guess while we're
Right,
doing the
right.
nitpicking here, we should do that.
Well, no, but that was, I believe, my understanding was the clarification that
Yeah,
what
yeah,
needed to be. Or what needed to be.
So
clarified.
Robert's Rules of Order say we can revisit any motion
Right,
until it's been certified.
and it's on here is to discuss and consider.
Yes, yeah,
So that's what I think that the board needs to make that decision in terms of a motion. Now I'll try and make the motion, but I thought maybe you wanted to have discussion regarding specifically the board of supervisors.
I guess I was sitting there trying to think if there's any other issues that we need to think about before we start voting.
Well, that could be, I mean, I'm not sure what it is you're thinking.
I guess I don't know. We had talked about 3 weeks ago giving the super, first you said no raise.
Right, and you guys talked about 1 to 2%.
And we mentioned maybe everybody deserves a raise because it isn't just about the current supervisors, it's about folks that might want to run,
Right.
you know? So whatever the board votes, whether it's 1%, 2%, or taking it up to 15%, I don't care.
Well, we can't go to 15%.
I'm just kidding.
We talked about a 400 or 800. I don't know if that was
I don't know.
a
what-
percentage, but that was just the number we talked. We're not talking,
My guess is
I believe-
1% is about 450.
Yeah. Which would, 2% would be double that. Yeah,
I really.
math
appreciate-
lessons over for today.
Okay. But I mean, whatever we do has to be done in terms of promotion.
Yeah, correct.
And so I think the bigger discussion is if I understand what you're saying, that our part-time people don't get a raise.
they get a prorated raise.
That's not what you
That's
said.
not what I'm saying.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I said full-time employees, 37.5 hours.
So then what do we want to do on part-times?
I don't want to do anything with part-times. Because then you get in a situation where you've got a high school kid that comes and cleans, we're going to pay them a certain percent. It's just too much, just
There
nitpicking.
might be a distinction between, and I'm going to use Sean's county
Sure,
part
sure.
because they bring in tips.
Sure.
And I think that we make a distinction between part-time and temps.
There's a difference.
I think it says seasonal.
Seasonal.
Yeah.
It says
Okay,
seasonal
sorry.
in the handbook. Sorry to interrupt, but that's. what
But
it
part-time, like for example, at the county attorney's office, they've been with us for years and years and years. And always in the past, when we handed out the percentage, whatever that percentage might be, they were recipients of that percentage.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it can't be revisited or looked at, I'm just history here. And so the presumption would be, if we had done a percentage, I guess that they would have gotten that percentage. So if you look at their status in terms of what part-time is, I guess we wouldn't technically would be all over the place on a flat rate to be sure.
Mhm.
But you would be all over the place on a percentage if we did a percentage too. In other words, each
Mhm.
individual, based upon what he or she was making, would get more or less, which is one of the reasons that we as a board looked at the flat rate, was so that everybody would be not necessarily equal, but the gaps wouldn't continue to grow. That they would get, top to bottom would get the same amount of money.
Do we know how many hours a week the people who are consistently part-time?
Well, I don't know,
I think
Dwayne,
they're-
do you have any part-time?
No,
I do have a question though, is the 4,000 going to be based on 37.5 hours a week or 40 hours a week?
whatever
Well, the
your
handbook
department's
says
full-time,
full-time is 37.5.
but it's
So,
your 40-hour department, so it'd be for you the same.
you know, and some, if there's, you know, there were, because they take a half-hour lunch, so that comes up, it's not a paid lunch, so they're here 40 hours, but they take a half-hour lunch, so it's 37.5 paid. I don't know how that came about, it was long before my time, but. So I'm trying to think, we don't have any part-time, I don't think, in the treasurer or the
I
recorder.
think the only place is,
Now, I don't know about the assessor, but that's a different board altogether.
yeah,
The county attorney is the
Um,
one that called to ask for clarification.
Right,
after your
and
motion
they,
last
I'm
week.
sorry, Chris.
Sorry, I'll wait.
After you're done, Chris is next.
Okay, but we have two part-time, I believe, at the attorney's office.
And Dan and Ray.
Yeah, but Ray just got a raise.
yeah.
We can only consider from July 1st on.
Right, that's
What you're
true.
talking
Good
about.
point, thank you.
Chris,
I'm gonna speak as an appointed official in the county. And yes, I have my own board, but the Board of Health does not authorize the bottom line of our budget. Historically, we follow what the compensation board or what the supervisors approves. It makes it a little difficult. I guess my question is, what did the assessors board recommend for that individual, for Steve? Since he's not an elected official in the county, but he works for a commission, what did that board recommend for him for a raise? Is I think it's becoming a little convoluted this year when we're talking about salaries, because we've got all these different things going on. While I understand what the compensation board recommended, and I know that they put a lot of thought into that process, historically, the supervisors have not done a flat rate. It's like a percentage. So this is becoming a little confusing. And when you're an appointed official, it's a little different, even though you have your own board. The three of you have to approve the bottom line of our budget. That's by Iowa code. So it becomes a little more complex and convoluted. As you know, we had a joint meeting to discuss things. And now we're still waiting to figure out what the bottom line of our budget is. And then I need to go back to my Board of Health and have yet another discussion. So it becomes not always a fair and equitable process across the boards for all county employees. And I think that that's something that it almost becomes a point of contention when you have people that are appointed doing a job just like an elected official. I can only speak for myself. Joe's here, he's on my board, as you know. I think that it becomes challenging. And it's challenging during budget time, but I would be remiss if I didn't have that conversation on behalf of appointed officials. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, and I would just say the same thing applies to my department, that this is generally, for my whole career, we follow the recommendation, which you guys normally don't always go with 10 or 15%, or that's extreme. But usually it's a blanket, okay, everybody, we're gonna knock that, say if they recommend 5%, then you guys knock it down to 3. And I understand Chris's feeling. It's kind of like we have a different, obviously the conservation board is different as well, kind of like her board setup, but it's almost like you're penalizing administrators in those boards as their appointed officials and saying that, well, these people are worth a 15% raise or a 10% raise, and you're going to get a 5, which a 5 is a good raise. So I'm not trying to be,
Right.
it's just like, where did this is a new scenario that there's a inkling of unfairness going on here, so that's all I'll say on that.
Sean, what do you mean unfair? How? I'm serious.
Well, you have your treasurer, your auditor that are all doing administrative functions, and then you have I don't know what your title is, county health
Administrative,
nurse,
Public health
and you have a
administrator.
director of a conservation board that's also doing payroll and bills and that kind of level of accounting type budgeting. And I'm not saying it's the same, obviously, but and I'll take gladly whatever I get. I'm not trying to complain. I'm just, this is a different way that you're doing things this year, and it's a little confusing to these outlying. And I don't know how it's applying to the engineer's office either, but
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of like you're picking people, and I understand elected people are different, but and drawing them out as more important. And some of them are, obviously. I'm not saying the sheriff and the county attorney have a very high level importance in the county, but I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. It's just something to think about.
Well, I think there's a lot of validity in what you both just said, but I want to also put things in context. So, and I'll just use the figure 5%, which is probably accurate in some instances, 5%, some instances it's 6%, but regardless, it's, when we talk about quote fairness, and I don't like that word, but when we talk about it, 15% is different than 10%. And we don't have the ability to make that equal. We have the ability to cut it, but not to make it equal. So if I cut the 15 by 1/3, then I have to cut the 10 by 1/3. So it's never going to be equal or quote fair. And so the discussion from the board about the flat rate was to try and keep the gap from growing. The sincerity was there. In other words, as you correctly indicated, both of you, in the past, the board has passed on what the percentage was. And in the past, for the most part, the compensation board has made it relatively easy because they'll just suggest a percentage. And as you correctly indicated, we can look at it and go down. It can't go up, but we can go down with it. And traditionally, we've done that and then spread it through the entire county. We didn't have that luxury this year, and we can't hand out 10% raises or 15, because we can't go up on the 10, but we can't do it. And so a method of trying, maybe, I mean, like I say, it was done in all sincerity, and maybe we need to revisit it, but I'm saying that the decision behind that was for those folks that were outside that scope, to have the same amount of money so that some of the lower end actually would experience a higher percentage technically towards their salary. And some of us in the higher end, like myself, I don't think we needed it, but that's another conversation. I don't know how to make it equal unless we go through and cut the percentage down to the bare bone and do the best that we can. I'm not saying that's not possible, but then there's going to be a group of people who are going to come back and say, well, that's not fair because now I'm getting 3% and this one over here is getting 7%. And it's a no-win situation because of what the compensation board did, the way that they brought it.
Well, we did talk at one of our budget sessions about doing a 10% miss. What was it, 5%?
Yeah, we discussed 5%. Yeah, as far as that part of it goes, for everybody else.
Maybe that's a clearer way to go if it's going to be such a dilemma.
I mean, I can empathize and sympathize with everybody's position. But what I will categorically state is there's no way that we can hand out 10% raises. It's just not going to happen. And that it's not a reflection upon our employees or the work that they do or our department heads or any of the rest of it, because it absolutely is not. They're phenomenal.
Mhm.
But we're sitting here looking at a budget and we're cutting budgets and we're bringing everybody in.
We're trying to.
Well,
We
we're
haven't
trying
done
to,
it yet.
yes. And we intend to have a conversation yet with Dwayne, for example. So the point is that we're looking at cutting and then to turn around and give it all back, especially with the advent of the ambulance coming forth. We have to make some painful decisions. And if we're going to revisit it, which we can, and if we're going to look at that percentages again, then we have to cut the percentages.
You know, Lee, I'm wide open to that. Does anybody on Zoom would like to make any statements? Because we're going to hear what everybody says before we stop this. Anybody on Zoom want to talk? I guess not. Hang on.
You're not on Zoom, Dwayne. I'm sorry.
Mark, I see you on there. You want to talk?
No, I'm
I
just.
can,
Would you please?
sure. So as I've created a spreadsheet every year that I give to my compensation board representative, who's Tom Loudon. The compensation board takes a look at the 5 counties above us in population and the 5 counties below us in population, and they try to come up with what's competitive and what's best considering everything that we do here within the county. Some of the other things they put in are statistics for those same 11 counties, including us, as well as Washington and Henry, to give him a better example or better idea of what the treasurer's office does comparable to everybody else. So they have a completely educated opinion, or they make an educated decision on what that is. This year, I've done it for all of the offices. And to give you some context, the elected officials, with the exception of the supervisors, are all below where they quote unquote should be as the 48th ranked state county in the state population wise. The assessor is below. The public health administrator is above. Conservation is almost dead set even. Emergency management is below. The engineer is above. And this is just straight statistics. This is not indicative of who does what. This is just straight numbers. So when it was brought to the compensation board, and my Tom Loudon is my guy, and he actually wasn't the only one who came into my office and asked for this. Susie actually has a copy of it as well. So
Yeah, I've
they
got a
took
copy right here.
they took all of that into consideration when making this decision based on the elected officials only. Now, as far as fair and equitable is concerned, I know that the assessor has his own board that takes care of all of his budget, and then they levy. So they are completely apples to oranges compared to what the rest of us are. Chris has her own, but to my understanding, the Board of Supervisors kind of holds the purse strings on that. So while the Board of Supervisors, and we'll go a couple of years back for this. There were a few years ago during COVID where the members of the public health or the employees all got a $10,000 raise. Then
No, I want to clarify that. It was not a raise, Mark. It was.
a
it
$10,000 bonus.
No, it was a $10,000 hazard pay that was utilized by CARES funding that did not cost the county any money.
Okay.
And that money came back to the county for hours
Okay.
that we worked above and beyond
Chris,
during the pandemic.
So let me backtrack.
thanks for it.
Let me
Thanks for
backtrack.
bringing that out.
Public health got $10,000 that wasn't discussed in their budget meeting prior to, regardless of what they got it and how they got it. They also got the 5.5% that the rest of us got last year, then came back and got an additional 5% compounded onto that 5.5 because of how whatever happened. So I don't know that there's a way to be completely fair and equitable for anybody because we're all different. I can't compare what I do with what Bart does. I can't even compare what I do with what Scott does or what Kelly does, and we're within 50 feet of each other. The supervisors cap it, or sorry, the compensation board caps it. Supervisors make their decision. They go from there. I'll be happy to let anybody have the spreadsheet to show.
I've got it right here, Mark.
Okay.
So
But
on some of the positions, there's a pretty small range, like just $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. On others, there's a bigger range.
Right. And then there's a big jump with supervisor, with public health, with, yeah, I mean, there is. And not to say they're not worth it. I mean, I would never want to do what Chris Estel or the people in the public health office do. I don't know that I wouldn't know what to do if I walked out to Sean's office. I'd be completely lost. And I think they do a fantastic job.
That's Mark. Nobody wants to be giving them shots. I'm going to be sure of that.
Yeah. But in the sense of what's been done in the past, and I've been here, this is my 12th year, what's been done in the past is the compensation board shows up with a recommendation for elected officials that the supervisors have been used across the board. This is the first year that I'm aware of that they've decided, and the first year that, with the exception of last year, I guess, with Back the Blue, where it wasn't a straight shot across the board, where somebody else has been a little different percentage. So it does get a little confusing. And I understand that, but I also feel like you guys are being pretty transparent with it.
Thank you, Chris. One
I
more.
just wanted to say too, you're right, Mark, you're right. That's historically, I've been here for 15 years. That's historically what happens. On the flip side of that, I think that the last several years, I've been to a lot of meetings where there have been step longevity increases, and you're right, we had a wage matrix that was implemented last year for the first time, like some other departments have. So I think that honestly, we heard Pat McMahon reference this last couple weeks ago. I think that process needs to be addressed while we're looking at the handbook. I think that may be part of the issue that we're seeing, because like I referenced to, a step or longevity, we don't have a merit raise process for those individuals that don't understand it. So this is usually the one time a year that the majority of us get a salary increase. Is that?
And to that point, I ran into the same thing a few years ago where
Yes.
I had quite a turnover. So I created a step program and presented it to the supervisors as part of an agenda that they approved. So in a situation like that, it sounds to me like it would be the department head's responsibility to come up with something like that, to bring to the supervisors, to have them approved, because they can't argue now. I have somebody that's going to be due next month for a step increase with a budget that was, or amount that was already approved in a budget last year. So I will literally just walk in, it will be an agenda item that has already been approved, is already part of my budget, that I'll be in and out in less than a minute. Just to make it easier for everybody.
Any other comments?
I'd like to ask Chauncey a question.
Oh, go ahead.
One of the things that we've been kicking around this morning, Chauncey, is whether or not prorate part-time on the flat rate. Is that legal?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't stepping in another
So
bucket.
if the presumption is $4,000 for a full-time, if somebody's a half-time, it's certainly not illegal for you to consider that when making the raise.
So ball's back in our court.
That just made me think, Chauncey, let's say you're part-time.
That's why I say zero.
No, okay, forget, you're just
It's not
a
about you.
custodian.
Pain in the butt.
Did you write that down, Abby?
I put all my quarters in the dish.
I would just ask if you guys do something like that you would make a consideration for hourly as well, because not everybody's salaried. That was another consideration. Some people work by the hour. So if you're doing a pro rate, well, if there's a part-time hourly person or if there's a full-time hourly person, just that should be in the not to make your life harder, but I just know that those people exist.
Buck 95 an hour.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
Are we
Go ahead.
ready? Anybody else want to say anything on Zoom land? Oh, that's
I
right.
just wanted to say,
It's not, you're under
from
the.
Sean and
chief
Chris's
counsel.
perspective, giving the elected officials a different percentage than other department heads or a different rates from the department heads. I think that's where the heartburn comes in from their end of the world. Because then you're taking, well, this department head is worth this much more this year than last year, and this one isn't. And yes, the fair is in Des Moines in August. Other than that, there is no fair.
Okay. That's my man. Well, there's the county fair. Okay.
Can anybody in the room tell me how many part-time people we have in this county? Because obviously a part-time person, are they gonna be salaried? If
I
they
guess
are, how many do
that's
we have?
part-time employer.
I have a part-time salaried and I have a part-time hourly. So, yes.
Not to confuse the equipment.
But I don't do payroll.
Bart, do you have any part-time people? And they all work full-time at 37 and a half hours? I know you mentioned the county sanitarian. How many hours does he work?
30
30.
officially.
Okay.
Unofficially, I'm not sure.
I can't answer that.
Yeah.
He's not my direct report.
The engineer probably have a better answer to that than. I'm not throwing you under the bus.
I don't think
He's
we
there
paid
at
him.
9 o'clock most every morning, and he works as he needs to, and he spends a lot of time out doing inspections, you know.
That's why percentages are easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
since we're gonna change this, I'm gonna
It works
make a
out to
motion, we
42
go,
bucks an hour, 2,000 hours.
and we talked about this in budget planning, and then we got on a different vein. Let's just cut the compensation board in half for everybody. So that'd be 7.5 for the 2 and 5 for everybody else. Sounds like it'd be simpler.
So the motion is to revisit what we did last Monday, or was it last Monday? And cut the compensation board recommendation in half. Is this correct?
Yes.
That's what she said.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Well, does that include us?
Oh, thank you for the clarification. We'll give ourselves a 1%.
So the
Unless you want to do
motion,
nothing, I'm open to that.
so the motion, as I hope I understand it, is to cut the compensation board's recommendation in half, except for the supervisors, and you, or it sounds like you, if it's 1%, you want to cut it to 1%.
It was like, what,
We can zero us out, not affect anybody else. The code allows us to do that.
Yeah, I know that.
Oh, okay, cool.
So give me the clear motion again.
isn't 1% like $400? Isn't that what we figured?
1% would be $410.
Yeah, it's something like that. Again, with the maintenance, everybody gets something. Okay, so cut the compensation board in half,
So you want to revisit the decision made last week
correct?
to cut the compensation board in half, recommendation in half, except for the supervisors, and you want to give them 1%.
And then I think you're saying 5% for,
Yeah, it'd be 7.5 and 5%, right?
so the other option before, under discussion, is that you leave things the way they are with the exception of us and give everybody 5%.
I'm open to that. Well, clarify your mind.
Okay,
Clarify what
no,
you're
I'm
talking
just-
about.
We have a motion. I will second that motion.
to,
revisit,
One.
to cut the comp board in half and give the supervisors 1%.
and everybody else 5,
7.5 and 5.
the rank and file.
Lee, I'm sorry, I'm confused just listening to this. When you say.
Oh, surely not.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm confused. When you say cut the compensation board in half, that makes it 5% for most of the electeds. But then D went on to say, give everybody else 5%. So I'm confused. I'm not.
Yeah, I think it should
I'm
be
not
separate, 2
understanding the
separate
motion.
motions.
I'm sorry, but
But,
I don't
Well, okay,
understand the
that's fine.
motion.
I was just
for
trying to do.
Maybe clarification for everybody. I think what we're looking at is what was just brought up, is that in the past, we've always passed on to department heads.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so essentially what she's saying is that the 5% that the elected officials would get, with the exception of Chauncey and Bart, we would pass on to everybody else as well.
so instead of leaving it at 10%, you're gonna give them 5% as well, or just leave it at 10%?
I think the way I understand it, by cutting it in half means the 15 would go to 7.5.
Okay,
The 5 would, the
Okay.
10
I
would
did
go
not
to 5.
understand
It's
that
just
motion.
divided
I'm
by 2.
sorry. all right.
I'd like to withdraw my second and make another motion. If you withdraw your motion.
Sure.
My motion is to do what Dee said and to cut the comp board in half with the exception of the supervisors. And I think we should take 0 because it's a lot of work to do those 3 people for that.
Hey, Susie,
Yeah,
I am so sorry to interrupt you, but since you guys are talking fair and equitable, a 5% for the electeds is less than $4,000.
Yeah, that's.
well, that's. I just want to get this decided in a fair way.
No.
We're trying to be very fair.
No,
Is there a way that you guys could do it where the electeds, other than Bart and Chauncey, got 4,000 and make it fair with them? And then whatever that percentage drop is would then be applicable to Bart and Chauncey? So it'd be 5.5 or 5.7 or something like that. And then,
If, Mark, if we cut it a third, that would be 10% for Mark, that'd be 10% for Chauncey and Bart, and 6.5 for everybody else. For the other elected officials. Just round figures.
If we cut it in half, you're gonna be at 10% now?
No,
10% of
No, if you cut, I'm just saying, if we cut a third, that would put Bart and Chauncey at 10%.
and put the rest of us at 6 1/3, and that
And then
is
7.5%.
pretty close. Yeah, that's just over $4,000 for me as an elected, and Kelly and Scott are pretty close to the same as far as salaries are concerned.
If I'm not mistaken, I think a third would, I'd have to do the math, but I think a third of is right around 7.5%.
That's a fourth. 6 2/3 would be for
Okay,
myself, for Kelly, for Scott. And then for you guys, unless you choose something different, and that would be 10% for Bart and 10% for Chauncey.
and then.
But that would put everybody, with the exception of the supervisors who choose their own, Chauncey and Bart, who the compensation board recommended more, all along that $4,000 line. So for instance, Sean and Chris would be getting the same sort of annual bump that an elected official would be getting. So it would make it fairer across the board.
And I guess I'm just gonna say, I think you should just stay the way it was, and I'll take my lesser percentage, because this deal you're coming up with now is penalizing
Yeah, I agree.
my lower employees and everyone else in the room.
I agree, Sean. I feel the same
Just
way.
pretend Chris and I never spoke and leave
Yep.
it the way it was.
Yep, I agree.
That's what I would prefer right now.
I second it.
So you think 6.6% is too low for your other employees?
It's lower than they were gonna get
Yes.
before I opened my mouth.
Me too,
Okay.
me too. I don't wanna cause distress. I
Yeah.
just wanna, I was
I
just
think
making a
if-
statement. I don't wanna cause,
Exactly.
Everybody
You
keep
felt
this up.
fine before this morning with what you've done, just leave it.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because that's gonna cut everyone on the payroll's money, and if you were settled on what you did, let's leave it that way.
You know, I will say,
I agree.
my original motion and thought last week was to help our employees of this county and cut the budget other places from the departments where it could be cut from. Therefore, not punishing the employees.
Right, the human resources in this county are worth far more than a dollar amount, so I would recommend that you just leave it the same. That's my professional recommendation as well, Sean, being appointed.
I'll withdraw all my motions. You guys can tell me what you think. I told you just now what I think.
Well, just for the sake of hearing from the people who pay this bill, I happened to interact with some of them the day after our meeting and took quite a bit of that we gave too big a raises. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. Just for the
Which
sake of
part?
it. The 4,000 flat fee. And I think it's because it was the change of, it's a change.
Did those same people think that it was okay not to cut departments' budgets then? Just let them?
We worked on that after that. So we have,
We have a little. We haven't done our due diligence, as you always say.
Yeah.
We need to go over that budget line by line and take money to help our workforce, you know, to, it's my opinion.
We don't want staff turnover within this county. That costs the county a lot of money as an employer. And you don't want staff turnover. You want tenured, competent staff in every department, and that's what we currently have. So we don't want to see staff turnover. We don't.
Yeah.
It's detrimental to agencies.
Chris, we understand that. I
know,
understand
I'm
that.
just,
I-
You know,
I'm not the one that put this on the agenda, so you guys can.
You guys said to put it on. We discussed it, so if you're looking at me, it's not on me.
I am not looking at you. I'm not looking at you.
Okay.
we had a discussion. Let's move on to the next item.
Well, we haven't actually, we can't till we. So if we go back, the point of clarification originally when this was put on was to clarify the elected officials, those rates that were established by the compensation board and the elected officials and their immediate deputies. And 4,000 for non-elected officials. Or 4,000 for for everybody else. And I asked the board to go to 0, and I think you said 1%.
yeah, then Susie said 0. I'm
But
okay
then I
with
would
either
do that
one.
whole thing.
So the point of clarification. We accept the compensation board's recommendation for elected officials, exception supervisors to 0 and $4,000 for all others.
As last week, but the clarification is the supervisor 0, and then the part-timers would be prorated. And I'm not sure how we do an hourly rate prorated. Probably,
Look at the hours they work.
yeah,
Compare that to what they work in a year. A normal person works 2,080 hours a year if they work 40 hours a week. So at that point, let's say Chris works,
1950, I think, if you work 37 and a half, I'd have to do the math, but I think that's what it is.
yeah, but that you use
Yeah.
that full-time.
Yeah, 2,080 hours, yes.
so if we're back to our motion from last week, all we need to do is clarify ours, which if we go to 0
Right.
and the prorate the part-times, does that cover everything?
I was sitting here trying to think if it did cover everything, so we don't have to do this again.
And the immediate deputies.
So you're saying to accept the compensation board's proposal of 15 and 10%,
With the exception of the board of supervisors.
with the exception of the supervisors, which are going to a -1. Oh, wait, 0, sorry. And to any part-time person, not temporary, not seasonal, any full part-time person, prorate those hours.
Prorate the dollars.
Of this, yeah.
Is that the same for Chauncey's two situations? It's prorated for the salary person and for the hourly.
Right.
Yeah.
And 4,000.
4,000 for everybody else.
And again, the idea with that was a one-time, this will probably be the only year we do this, at least,
I would imagine we're not going to be able to give these kind of raises next year.
right?
Well, and if we're lucky, the legislature will remove the compensation board. And I'm leaving that up to you because you said.
It's Bill there.
Yeah.
There
There's
is.
a bill there.
All right,
Are you talking the bill which bill are you talking about?
we can talk about that.
Eliminate the compensation board.
Wow. Okay, all in favor of that resolution?
Wait,
But
Do
it's
they-
meant- So I was.
Oh, wait, maybe you should read it back to us. How's that?
all right, accept the comp board recommendations, the 10 and 15% as was discussed. And that also includes their immediate deputies, with the exception of the board getting 0%, 4,000 for everyone else, and prorate that 4,000 for the part-time people.
Does that cover everybody?
I think so.
Who made this job? You?
That's fine.
Somebody made it.
I'll second.
Motion by Dimmitt, seconded by Sandquist. All in favor signify by saying aye.
All right. Good job, everybody.
That deserves a round of applause.
And no, I wouldn't applaud yet because we haven't certified the budget yet, so we could do this again next week.
But you know what? I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
And as somebody said, we're transparent. I mean, that's why we're doing this. Okay,
And the way I got it figured, it's my wife's fault. So,
Do you have this for her phone number?
yeah, I do. 4707.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to consider approval of notice of public hearing on proposed maximum property tax dollars for fiscal year 23-24 budget.
I don't think we can do that.
You're not ready.
I talked to Jeff Shipley this morning and he thinks the Senate might have passed it, but he says hopefully sometime this week, the House will take it up. So I think we need to, as supervisors, do what Shannon asked us to do last Friday.
yeah,
She
so what
said
we're
you're not
talking,
ready for it.
Huh?
She said you're not ready for it. That's
Okay.
what she told me.
As soon as we're ready for it, we can do that.
what we're talking about is in the legislature, they're trying to delay when we have to certify the budgets till April 30th, but it hasn't officially passed, although all indications are it will, because the state made an error and the auditors don't have the final numbers for the budget that we have to work with. So we may have to do this all again if our budget really goes down a lot. And so Shannon said we had to go ahead and at least publish our maximum.
But she told me this morning you're not ready.
Yeah,
But
so,
that's what this is about and why it's on our agenda.
so we can't have a notice until Shannon says we can.
Not all of your decisions have been made.
I get that. Okay, so moving on.
So
Go on.
can I ask a question on that
Sure,
thought?
absolutely.
Can we amend our agenda since we're in meeting and go ahead and work on our budget today? And get that done?
Which Chauncey?
I don't know if he has court, he might have to work.
Because other groups amend the agenda.
Well, could we just finish this agenda before we decide
But
that?
before we adjourn,
Okay,
I know historically they do it at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm not Robert's Rules of Order official, okay?
okay.
I don't have my cheat
and
sheet.
and
You
that's
really need to
based
work on that,
developments
Chris?
at the meeting.
I don't have my cheat sheet with me.
Kind of problematic.
All right, and so that means, do we set a date for public hearing on maximum property tax dollar proposal?
Not if we're not ready.
That's right.
Okay, we'll just move on.
Make committee reports. Really, we are gonna finish this at some time today.
Okay, last week at a meeting with Kevin Riley, Shannon, and I asked Bart and Dwayne to come, since they're large departments, to see his mock-up. He said he'd send a link that we can send out so everybody can look at it. We're making progress to make it simple. When we get that link, we'll let everybody look at it. It's not like the final prettiness that will be eventually, look now more for ease of use and finding what you want and those types of things. And, you know, he will be following up with departments. Seal, the news there is the writings on the wall that the state wants the regions to be fewer regions. So
what?
we are working with the Southern Iowa one next door, which is Wapello, Mahaska, Davis, and I think Eppinose County, to merge with them. We approved it last week. They will approve it probably this Wednesday. Opioid money.
Can we just real quick, let me ask you, it really has no impact on us other
No.
than services.
Yeah.
No, and actually it might be a good thing because our current board works very well together and we will complement them and they will complement us. They have more case managers, which is what their CDS's kind of roles they do, whereas ours do more of the other administrative stuff. So we look for that as like a necessity. The state's really moving in that direction. Opioid money. So after a frustrating Friday, I finally got the money applied for. And it is for Teva, Walgreens, Allergan, CVS, and Walmart. No, I don't have the final number yet. I don't know if anybody does for sure. I'll work on getting that. But the important part was to get our paperwork done, which was not an easy task, but it's done. Ambulance, we had a meeting this morning and thank you too for going. We're going to continue to work on the county option as we have in our budget meetings and moving forward in tandem for a transitional year. So that's going on. Pathfinders, I had that Monday night after things settled down with our agendas. Going to invite them to come give an update. There's a lot of good work going on there. And they have been able to fund nearly all their positions, which is really good from grants. And then we all had conference board.
So I had my first DCAT meeting, thanks to Chris. She helped unconfuse me, such as it is.
Only for that meeting.
I didn't say a word.
So it, it took a while to get me, careful, Susan, it took me a while to get them to get me seated, because I wasn't officially a member of the DCAT board till I was seated. I stood up for a long time, and just moving on.
Get used to that.
I know, had a Rust board meeting on Wednesday. We went through the sewer rate resolutions. They've all gone up a little bit, about $3, with the exception of Ollie, which took a big hit. But part of the reason for that is because Ollie is about $11,000 in arrears. And so I said to Bruce that we can't let this spiral out of control like we did on Mount Union. So, and Deke Wood, Keokuk County Supervisor, is well aware of that. So we're going to try to come up with some alternatives other than what's happening right now. Sean and I and Michael Brown, met with some folks via Zoom. Not sure where they were all out of regarding Jackson Point. And I tried to get answers to some specific questions, but I thought to some extent they were kind of vague. But basically, what I'm concerned about, what Sean's concerned about, is maintaining the facility for the folks that live there, understanding, if I, help me out here, Sean, the investment company that was originally involved in it, they've got all the goodie out of it, so they want to go ahead and walk away now and be done, which I guess is traditionally what these investment folks do. Keyway is the management company that has been, as I understand it, been collecting the rent, and then a portion of that goes back for maintenance and upkeep of the property, and the county heretofore has not had any financial responsibility towards that end. So between Sean and Michael, they kind of guided me through it. I'm going to reach out to Dick Reed because Dick was involved in the management aspect of it for a long time, just to see if he can remember, because we've got, how far back? I can't remember now.
Early 2000s.
Okay, for contracts and this and that and whatnot. And this, some of this is, how many pages?
120-page management contract. Yeah, it's
So
more
it's-
than,
Wow.
it's for an attorney to look through, I would say.
Yeah, it's certainly beyond my scope, but so it's something that we started the process. This company that was invested in it has offered, I think, $10,000 to Keyway and $10,000 to us to pay any legal costs to get out of it, as I understood it. Is that the way you understood it, Sean?
Yeah, they're basically, they're wanting to withdraw from the partnership, and then the Jefferson County, what's it called? Public, whatever the
Court, yeah.
entity that was set up that you've appointed it to. And the other Keyway will continue, hopefully the end goal is continues to operate into the future at no expense to the county.
And according to Michael, the county does not own the building. It's not ours. That's why I say it's convoluted. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. It is just what it is. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I really appreciate Sean because he pulled all this together. So but we'll keep on it.
Yeah,
I
thank
suppose then we'll involve Becky and Gina at some point in the process. I assume the board will have to be.
Yeah, it might be slow, and I think the problem, and it'd be good to talk to Dick, is that myself and everyone involved with it today don't know anything about the way it was set up 20 years ago or 18 years ago, whatever it's been. So we're having to educate ourselves, and the bankers and the property managers do this stuff all the time. So they are helping us through it, I would say, but.
That's all I had to say.
No, we had the conference board together. I also had the emergency management meeting on the 8th, which was last Wednesday night. And a budget was passed. We had nice attendance from the mayors, which I thought was really nice. Other than that, I think we as a county have a lot of things to look at with emergency management, with the ambulance. You know, we need our county to be very well protected. Anyway.
Yep.
I also had a workforce board meeting. And the governor of Iowa is trying to reduce a lot of the departments, I think, from 32 to 16. We'll see how that goes. I have been around long enough to know when there were workforce offices all over Iowa. And that was reduced to 39, then again to 37. You know, creating hardship for folks that wanted to look for work, having to drive, let's say from Donaldson to north of Ottumwa to even, you know, unemployed people having to drive too far, but we'll just see how that goes. I
What,
know I'm not really,
what would that do to workforce, the current proposal?
it would probably reduce the areas as well.
Um,
As it is now, Region 15, which used to be the 10 counties contiguous with Indian Hills, is now goes from the southern county south of us all the way up to, oh, I believe Marshalltown. They've didn't use, well, anyway, it just realigned the counties that were in that situation. So anyway,
And there's no good way to get to Marston. There's no straight shot. But when you get up that way, then you're not too far from T.
oh, there you go. Anyway, anyway, that's it. Thank you. I believe the next item on the agenda. Oh, here, my favorite part, public comments. None? Okay, Chris.
I just want to say thank you for signing the resolution to move forward with the county operated ambulance service. I appreciate your time and dedication to that. It'll be a little painful, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it and it'll be good for all the county residents. So thank you for signing that today. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak today during the salary
We need
discussion.
your expertise.
Yeah.
After sitting through this meeting this morning, Stacy, if you didn't figure before, you know now that we need a lot of help.
I'm not sure I'm qualified.
Oh, yes, you are.
No, we're certified. Not qualified. Any other public comments? Brett?
Just like to say, if anybody's got any questions on emergency management, now's the time.
Can you send us a budget?
Or I can give it to your vice chair who has it,
Just
but I
so
can send it to whoever wants it.
Send it to me, I'll get to them.
Well, I think we just, yeah, that's fine. I think we need to remember that the commission is its own municipality.
Mhm.
We have mayors, we have a supervisor, and no fault to anybody, I guess, but the reason they have a voting right on that commission is they are the delegation for your, so she is the delegate for your county. So whatever we give out at those meetings, budgets, which we've had out, we had a budget work session, we've had meetings. That's the transparency of it to bring back, just like the mayor of Fairfield brings back to her city council. That's how it works. But so their meetings are open and
And I apologize. I apologize.
no, that's fine. I'm not gonna talk about it. I said now's the time to, if there's any questions on what we're discussing right now, because EMA seems to be there. It's on the agenda at the council meeting tonight. We go through this every budget year. But don't hear people the whole year till budget time.
Thank you for your comments.
Middle of the year.
We're gonna start about October next year.
So have you guys both looked at these bills?
I
I'm not got there yet. No. But I would make a motion to allow claims to approve the bill.
Okay, motion to approve.
What's that?
We all do that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nobody yet. Wait,
Second. So can we find one of the attorneys and ask them if we can choose?
Be careful. That thing is a hazard there.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Pat, are you still on?
He wasn't.
Abby.
I did.
Mike, no, we have not.
I thought we did.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye, aye.
I just